Uh, uh. Good morning. Good morning.
What's up, everybody? D-Spin, Morning Deuce. It's been a political week, so I figured I should start with a State of the Union, the State of the Deuce. The State of the Deuce is solid. Cool couple things are coming up. I'm excited for the interview this Friday because it will highlight an interesting event that I'm doing this weekend, which I'm going to talk all about on Monday. I think it's going to be a pregame and a postgame interview. I think I'm going to have an interview with the person who's doing the event with me on Friday, and then on next week, we're going to have a post-game interview. I have something set in the books with a friend who has a very successful, the biggest part of a very successful online presence having to do with cars. There'll be more on that when it fully falls into fruition, but it's going to be great. That's scheduled for a couple weeks from now, so that'll come out hopefully pretty soon. Have a couple other people in the pipeline, actresses, writers, a couple different pretty cool people in the pipeline. Also, the decision-making process in terms of getting the podcast on iTunes is almost complete. That's a weekend project coming up. We're now on episode 63, I believe. So there's a lot of archiving yet to do. The website needs to be cleaned up. I understand this. I'm working on it. I have some people working on it. The wheels are turning. Things are getting serious. And you, my hot friends, are in on the ground floor. So that's the State of the Union. Moving from the State of the Deuce to the State of the Trump, he is now the official nominee of the Republican Party. He has not accepted. He will not accept it until Thursday, but he is the official nominee, besting the largest field in GOP history. The roll call today, a little off the walls. Everyone introducing their state like it was a very weird pitch for why we should move to their state. People in Florida being like, it's tax-free and a good day here, a bad day here beats a good day anywhere else, and we live where you vacation, the delegates of the state, home to Disney World, and they didn't say any of the bad stuff. They weren't like, home to Disney World and that weird drug Flocka that makes bath salts look like herbal tea. They didn't say any of that stuff. You know, home of Florida where a guy once pulled an alligator and a shark outside of a lake and tried to sell it in front of a Publix and then threw it in a trash can when nobody noticed. They don't say that type of weird stuff. They only say the good things. They're only like, hey, welcome to the beautiful Vermont, the state of maple trees and green mountains. They don't tell you, like, the lowest economic GDP of any state in the union and a significant problem with opiate epidemic. Like, they don't say any of that stuff. Anyway, very strange series of events, the roll call. Sort of an awkward self-masturbatory situation. But it ended with New York passing, and there's a big theme of the Trump RNC convention, which is family, for better or for worse. About 6 Trump relatives are speaking at these events, and we heard from 2 of his daughters and 1 of his sons today. So the Trump unity momentum for the Republican Party is well underway. It has been a festival in Cleveland. I have been a part of the media coverage process, and one thing I know it's reinforcing to me is the power of planning. And I think that's what I want to talk about just for a couple minutes is the power of planning. The biggest difference between, I think, great success and mild success is preparation. The people that practice the most, I mean, statistically proven, they're the best at something. You know, Gladwell has the theory, 10,000 hours or 10 years of 40 hours a week. gets you to the level of mastery where you're at the peak potential, and anything else is negligible in terms of how much you can improve. So practice is important and planning is important. What you do ahead of time is huge, because what you do when you don't prepare is you lower your ceiling and you lower your floor. And the thing is, preparation doesn't always raise your ceiling. The best you might be able to do is a B+. That might be the best you can do. But if you prepare really well to make sure you're more likely to hit that B+, you raise your floor from your worst possible scenario being a D or an F to being a C or a C+. And I think that's sometimes almost as valuable. I played poker forever. I gambled. There's a great saying, money you don't lose buys as much as money you win. And what that saying is, if you are gambling and you had $100 and all of a sudden you have 70, people are thinking, I lost $30, and they start risking the 70 to win back the 30. But the thing is, if you lose $30 more doing that, those $30 that you lost when you were at 70, they're as valuable as the $30. They buy as much as the $30 you could win to get from 70 to 100. That's still just $30, and you want to make sure you're more likely to win 30 than lose 30. Money you lose buys as much as money you win. Well, preparing to make your worst possible outcome the best it can be is as valuable as making the best possible outcome the best it can be. Raising your floor. I think preparation is huge. And I know the feeling, and I can remember the times in my life where I've done something in a high-pressure situation and walked out and thought, I was so prepared for that event that if I did it 100 times, it never would have been better. And it's an unbelievably satisfying feeling and a hard one to get, and it requires a lot of work. We have the Olympics coming up. I'm going to talk about them later, but those athletes train for 4 years to be in the peak position for their 40-second, 30-second, 20-second event. The sprinters, Usain Bolt runs for 10 seconds in that Olympic event. And he trains for years, and everything he eats and everything he does is to optimize that one race. So he thinks, if I ran that race 100 times, I never would have run it better than I did this one moment in this time. And that's a beautiful feeling to come off and say, I couldn't have done better. More preparation wouldn't have helped. I did the best I possibly could have done. And I can think of the times in my life when I've been at that point, and I can think of the times in my life where I've gotten out of something and said, I did great, but if I changed this and this, I could have done even better. And those are important moments. Those are learning moments. But when you get out of an event and you don't have those moments, that level of satisfaction is something that you strive for. And that's preparation. Execution, preparation. Those are the two things. How well do you know what you want to do? And then how good are you at achieving what you prepared for? And that goes for covering an event like the State of the Union. It goes for whatever you're doing in your workday today. When you go in, it's like, how well prepared are you to do what you need to do in your workday, in your life, with your family, with your children, with your girlfriend, with your boyfriend? Are you well set out to be the best version of yourself? Because I say all the time, be the best person you can be. That was the phrase my dad told me every day of my childhood. What are you going to be? And I would respond, the best boy I can be. But it's not just wanting to do that and executing it. There's a level of preparation that comes as the tasks become more difficult in your life. So that's the end of part one, but part two flows a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit Olympics. 20 years ago yesterday, was when Muhammad Ali lit the torch in Atlanta, Georgia, in the 1996 games. It was an epic moment. He hadn't been on TV for quite some time. We hadn't heard from him. Parkinson's had put him, into the shadows, and to come out on a scene like that was a really moving moment. From all the documentaries I've seen about it, documentary segments, not full documentaries, but segments and reports I've read, it was a moving moment. Olympic athletes are incredible for so many reasons, but just the dedication to something is amazing. And I talked yesterday about that desire to be the best in the world at something. And if you can be the best in the world at something, you've really achieved something. There's some that are even more impressive. You know, the decathletes that can round themselves into so many different sports and be good at them. But I'm a diehard Patriots fan, and there's a unique story with the Rio Olympics related to the Patriots. They have the only active NFL player who made the Olympics, Nate Ebner. He made it in rugby. His dad played collegiate rugby, and so he decided to play rugby in college, and I guess it was an incredible bonding experience for the two of them. And his dad was killed in a robbery. They tried to rob his family's auto shop, and his dad was beaten to death and killed in 2008. And I guess rugby was the true bonding element of their relationship. And Ebner became an All-American in college at Ohio State as a rugby player, went on to play professionally for the Patriots, and took a leave of absence from the Patriots to try to make the Olympic rugby team, and hadn't obviously been playing rugby actively because he was playing football. And he made the team. He made the 12-man team. So you talk about preparation. I mean, the amount of mental and physical intensity he must have put, and then just the desire to achieve his goal. You know, I can't tell you what that would mean to him, but I can imagine that it would mean more having lost a father who rugby was the linchpin of your relationship to make the Olympic team to try to win a medal for that person carries an extra weight. And I think that's a very unique and interesting story. But we can't talk about the Olympics without talking about Zika. And we can talk about Zika in the United States because originally we thought Zika only comes, with blood, mosquito blood, or sexual transmission, right? Mosquitoes are spreading it, or sexual contact. Well, turns out in Utah, the Department of Health says a new case of the virus occurred between a caretaker and an elderly person, and they're not sure how it spread. So get terrified. However, caveat here, I don't believe them. But the story goes, and I'm reading from the New York Times, the patient who has fully recovered, so the person who got Zika from someone else, was a family contact who helped care for an older man who had become infected with the virus after traveling abroad. That man died in June. He also had other ailments, and it was unclear whether the virus contributed to his death. The Zika virus has caused more than 1,500 cases of birth defects, mostly in Brazil. In the United States, several hundred pregnant women have been infected with the virus. Most in Puerto Rico. Zika is transmitted by mosquito and sex, but neither seem to be plausible explanations for what happened in Utah. The infected caregiver who tended to the ailing man at home and in the hospital had not traveled to a country where Zika is circulating and had not had sex with him, officials say. Now, I'm not trying to get crazy, but they might have had sex. I mean, let's be honest. Either there was a mosquito bite that nobody can find because that shit happens, or they had sex and they don't want to talk about it because the dude's dead now and maybe he had some relatives and you don't want to, belittle the past on. I'm calling a little bit of bullshit here. I'm sorry, Department of Health, but I think you either missed a bug bite or you missed a little bit of love. I applaud this caregiver, if they did have sex with that person, to not put them on blast post-mortem, because no one wants to lie in repose while getting dumped on because, they sexually transgressed towards the end of their days. You're in a futile state. So no harm, no foul. But I'm just saying, I don't believe it. There's a bug bite or a sex bite that somebody's missing. But they say there's no evidence that mosquitoes here in Utah are doing the Zika trend. There's none that have Zika in them. They haven't found any evidence of the mosquitoes, and there's no evidence of sex. I don't believe that. This shit's going to come out pretty soon, and they're going to say they might have had sex. Just saying. going to be interesting to see if Zika actually impacts the Olympics. Sometimes I wonder if it's just like the horror stories that come out, because there were so many horror stories before Sochi in the Winter Games. And then other than like the random killing of stray dogs, which was pretty ridiculous, Sochi went off pretty well. So, and that one time the Olympic ring didn't open and Putin probably just, took a guy's life. But other than that, that's why planning and execution are important. You got to plan to make sure that ring opens, or else Poots and Boots is going to take you out. It'll be interesting to see how Zika really plays into the Rio Olympics. Obviously, the wealthy athletes are saying no, this is a good excuse for them not to go. But the athletes that work at Home Depot and are javelin tossers, that's not a high-paying sport, but this is their dream, and they've trained. Those guys are going no matter what. So it'll be interesting to see how this virus and the general lack of safety a little bit in Brazil plays a role. Some athletes are freezing their sperm. Hold that thought. We're going to talk about that on a later podcast. The very end of today is I reconnected with a great friend of mine because of social media, which is a little weird. Hopped on Snapchat right before I left work, and he had a snap that he had gotten to his beach house before everyone else. And I just checked the last 2 or 3. And it's interesting because I've tried to call him, but we have opposite hours. He's on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast, and we just never seem to get to connect. And because he was off on a weekday for some family thing and went to his beach house, I knew he was up later than he had been before. And I called him on the ride home, and we had an amazing conversation. And we just fell back into it as though he was my college roommate. And we fell back into it as though we were talking every day, even though it's probably been 6 months since I talked to him and years since I've seen him. It was a pleasure. We talked for an hour, and I felt great when I left the conversation. So I think if there's someone in your life you've been saying, I've been meaning to reach out to them, or if you have that person in your life who it's like a couple people, if you're lucky to have a relationship in your life where even after months or years of not talking to that person, you can fall back into it, don't let those relationships slip away. Just make the phone call. I know it takes the energy and the effort, and it's hard. But find a reason, whether it's social media, whether it's something else, whether it's something in the news, find a reason to just make that phone call, because you will feel better. I mean, I'm so happy I did. So I hope someone listens to this, calls somebody they like that they haven't talked to in a while, and has a better day because of it. That's all I want to do. Start your mornings off right here with D-Spin, Morning Deuce, hashtagtrendy.com. Tell your hot friends. I'm out.